Were all the Anunnaki negative? Today, I'm going hardcore. This post is really for the truth seekers who want to know the finer details about the Anunnaki and their role in the grand experiment here on Earth. This post may be too hard for some of you to digest who are not familiar with the Anunnaki. However, I will be writing an introductory article about who they are later on next month. Duality rules our universe through the opposing polarities of positive and negative charges. Duality, however, is not the true way of existence, since the most authentic form of reality is pure light made up from source energy. Everything comes from source. However, through distorting that light, the vibrations of energy lower in their frequency waveforms the more we move away from pure light and love. We currently exist on the densest plane of reality, on the 144,000th level. This is the heaviest and most fragmented distortion of light that has travelled from source to get to us, which creates the third dimension. The Anunnaki are fifth and sixth dimensional beings that were guided by the Galactic Confederation to seed the Earth's genetics, whilst they farmed for our planetary's minerals. This especially includes our nano-gold particles to restore their own planet's atmosphere in Nibiru from excessive radiation levels. The Anunnaki actually didn't know they were part of the grand experiment to create a supreme being in that of a human and only genetically created us because their lower-ranking working forces decides to rebel against their senior hierarchical leaders for their mineral mining operations. The reason why people get so caught up in the Anunnaki being labelling as evil is because the story behind their involvement in our history is that of a very confusing one, which tends to be simplified as them using us as slaves, full stop. Hopefully, by the end of this article, you will have a better understanding of our past and the Anu's involvement in creating and evolving our civilization. The first thing to contemplate when it comes to these entities is that they were divided amongst many family rows and betrayals within their kind. They all had different ideas on what to do with humans and in making plans for our planet. Some of these ideas were catered around service to self, and some were oriented towards service to others. The Anunnaki were presented with conflict from the get-go when battling with the native reptilians here on Earth. These reptiles were the ones which had built underground cities and had also colonised on other planets, like Mars, in their evolution, following the mass dinosaur extinction 66 million years ago. The native reptilians saw the Earth as their planet, as they were the first species to inherit the blue pearl, which caused an ongoing friction between the two entity forms. The Sumerian texts describe the Tablets of Destiny as a set of computer microchips that contain the information on the Anunnaki's war tactics, navigation routes, and their star maps, so that they could establish their mining colonies and fend off hostile attackers to pursue their goals. The information would highlight Enlil's strategic plan to carry out his conquests on Earth, starting with securing the areas between that of the Tigris and the Euphrates. This area is what we would call Iraq today. This region in Mesopotamia held the biggest portal on the planet, which would help solidify the Anunnaki's position on Earth if they could access and control this region. The first settlement was established in Eridu, which birthed the city of Bad Tiberia, which means bright place where the mineral is finished. 6 more cities followed that consisted of various mining sites and spaceports where the Anunnaki spaceships could depart from Earth with the cargo of gold that was collected and compiled together. Other Anunnaki were assigned to various roles in the whole operation, including those of Nana, Ninurta, Sin, Ninhursag, Smasmash, Ishtar, and more. The conflict grew when the lower-ranking Anunnaki, called the Igigi, rebelled against the higher hierarchical authorities because they grew tired of working in the colonies and space stations. In the Sumerian texts, there is a story called the Myth of Zu, which talks about one of the Anunnaki known as Pazazu, who was described as the god of evil, wind and storms, and also the carrier of plagues, pests and fevers. The Igigi sided with Pazazu, as they saw him as the one to overthrow Enlil. Enlil instructed Enki, his brother, to take Pazazu to Dire Gar in Nippur to act as mediator between the Anunnaki representatives and the Igigi because of the growing tension between the two sides. This was a sanctuary which held all the microchip data of the Anunnaki's plans, in which Pazazu stole and used it to try and establish his throne as king of the heavens. These microchips also acted like keys, which could enable or disable the Anunnaki's technology, including that of their ships. The Igigi saw Pazazu as their new leader and followed him once he took his new stance as a leading authority figure. This broke out into an outright war between Enlil and Pazazu and the Igigi. Enlil managed to regain control of the operations on Earth after a series of wars with his own kind, and instructed Enki, as a master geneticist, to recreate a similar version of the Igigi being that could continue on with the mining operations. He instructed that because of the negative turbulence and destruction caused by the Igigi, as part of their fellow kind, that this race would be genetically altered to be more compliant and understanding by nature. Enki did so by taking the current form of the evolved human at the time, Homo erectus, and upgraded its DNA structure to make it the improved Homo sapien sapien. Enki, who is also Poseidon, made a more loving species that were less likely to rebel like their previous counterparts by fusing chromosome 2 together. This did two things. One, it established the monkey see, monkey do characteristic traits, meaning this species were more receptive to ideas and instructions. Two, it birthed the empathy gene that allowed love and a judgment of one's actions to cause this being to be more compassionate by nature. Enki did this with the help of the Syrians, but also worked with the Acturians later on to encode higher levels of consciousness within the modern Adamu form to help humans start on their own civilizations. Enki has been described as the snake that tells Adam and Eve to leave the Garden of Eden, to start their own communities and societies elsewhere. Eden is more of a modern term for its original name, Edin, where the Anunnaki resided in Mesopotamia. Enlil was infuriated that Enki had let these humans eat from the forbidden fruit, which is really symbology for gaining knowledge from the tree of life. Enlil thought this knowledge would get corrupted, and the humans would use it to overthrow the Anunnaki, like before. Enlil was said to have the intention that the humans were to be bred like sheepdogs, where we would work for the Anunnaki, but still enjoy our lives in the process. He would reward us with agriculture and education, and from his perspective, was seen as his way to best evolve the human species, just in a more controlled environment. He did not want the mistakes of the past to repeat themselves once again, and took the conservative approach when experimenting with the human genome. This is why many of the codons that construct up our DNA that eventually form proteins are not fully activated, otherwise our power would be too exponential to manage. If used negatively under these privileged circumstances, we would have the potential to mimic the previous actions of the Draconians, which caused many of the conflicts in the universe in its snowball effect type manner. Once we were essentially re-engineered, it was Enki who deceived Enlil's commands by taking a selection of humans away to the Canary Islands to teach these beings how to rule the world from the perspective of a global loving consciousness. This was to be the start of the Atlantean era, where humans would make choices for themselves and progress onward with the grand experiment. The majority of the Anunnaki wanted to think more clearly and use both their psychic and telepathic abilities to better communicate without breaking down their own DNA in the Earth's denser atmosphere. To do so, they had plans to set up and create a new consciousness grid of 5D, which in turn would help the modern humans on Earth also increase their consciousness. Both Anil and Enki were on the same page with the overall plan for human development, but approached it in very different ways. The 5D grid was implemented in the early stages of Atlantis, which primarily proved a success before all the wars broke out. Earth's magnetic north and south pole combined to create a perfect toroidal field vortex, which resembles the shape of a torus ring that directly tied to our consciousness. Not only that, but it allowed the genetic codes contained within this field to be absorbed by all the inhabitants on Earth to embed the Unity blueprint here on our planet. This was the plan to transition us as 2D/3D hybrids into 5D. Unfortunately, the Igigi was seeking revenge after their defeat many years ago and were now inhabiting on Mars. When they attacked in the days of Atlantis, Mu and Lumira, these beings corrupted God's plan that held the 5D blueprint in mind by these beings interbreeding with humans. This created the Nephilim during Marduk, or otherwise known as Amun-Ra's reign, after Enlil's retirement of the chain of command. This form of negative Igigi race contained the Rh negative blood type, and these beings contained draconian genetics. This interbreeding between what is referred to as the fallen angels and earthly women corrupted man's DNA in the future children these women were soon to give birth to. This blood type is highly destructive, as these satanic betrayers of the light do not contain any empathy within the information fields of their blood. Enoch, who was the early incarnation of Metatron, has said there is literally no light in them. They lack the Anatolian autonomy, which contains the vibrations of love. These neg blood types have an inability to process their emotional responses based on the things they see around them, which are harmful due to problems with their optical lobes. These are issues with the signals being sent and received, which makes this type primary candidates to be psychopathic by nature. This interbreeding corrupted the future of humanity, who were then divided into different subtype hybrids that caused the dualistic separation in that of the light and dark within people. This put a huge dent in the plan for humanity to ascend into the higher dimensions. The Anunnaki were outraged by this and have been said to have caused global floods to wipe out the Nephilim, the fallen Anunnaki Dracos, and the humans they corrupted with their seed in an attempt to start again. There were about 200 fallen Anunnaki Igigis who managed to survive the floods and global catastrophes, but were later imprisoned underground by the Federation of Light. This was also implemented because these beings were heavily exploiting people as slaves and abusing their rights as overseers in the experiment. Some of them were said to have eaten humans, obeying to their satanic nature. This is where one of the concepts of hell came from, as the screams from the underworld were of that of the giants' demons that were imprisoned and cried out in frustration by their capture. After the global cataclysms that took the form of worldwide tsunamis, the Earth's magnetic south collapsed, which altered the crystalline grid of the planet and shortened our lifespan from 1,000 years to approximately 120 years at that time. Many believe the Anunnaki purposefully reduced our lifespan in the genetic alteration process, however. Please choose your own truth with whatever information resonates best. Many believe the Anunnaki purposefully reduced our lifespan in the genetic alteration process. However, please choose your own truth with whatever information resonates best. Later, Marduk passed on his reign to that of Osiris, benevolent, who was then killed by his brother Set. Miraculously, After being deceived to climb into a chest much like a coffin, and then later decapitated by Set, Isis, Osiris's wife, used Thoth's magic to impregnate her with Osiris's seed to give birth to Horus. Horus was then to battle Seth or Set to regain control over the throne by defeating him in combat. Set carries the bloodline of the Canaanites, which rule the world today. Not for long, pal. These Cain-Draco hybrids are also known as the Dro, who are in conflict with the Pleiadian DNA that exists in many of us. This is a war between light and dark, residing in the blood of the human form on our planet. It is said that the negative O and A blood types that have infected some of the human population from the days of the Nephilim and have been carried through up until the present day hold the information and consciousness of the Draco agenda. By keeping the general population in a low vibrational state, they could harness billions of souls' untapped energy, not only to feed the negative entities in the fourth dimension, but also to generate enough power to open up new portals of reality with their CERN technology. Concerning. This plan has backfired to become the new creators of the universe when God or the Creator turned the channel to shift us into a parallel universe. It severely messed up their plans, which is why we have the Mandela effect now. Essentially, the only option the RH negative beings have, which take the form in that of the elite leaders of the planet, is to try and kill off the Pleiadian genetics on Earth. The ones they can't kill, they will try and convert them using artificial intelligence to submit people into transhuman interrogation. The Drow, who serve Satan, have declared war with the Anunnaki, who are fighting for the light, and shall make their return soon. This dualistic battle, as you can now tell, has cycled through several times in our history, like a perpetual loop. This is what caused the Titan Wars, which we hear about in mythology all over the planet. The A-positive blood type is the pure one of Adam that was made by Enki. This carries the sparks of life which connects us to our soul and was created by the Anunnaki. I personally see it as a profound gift to give our souls the experience of the hero's journey, obtaining ascension through 2D to 5D. A-positive is the Pleiadian blood type that helps us evolve into being of light, the future form of ourselves that chose the pathway of the heart. It is also the blood type of Marduk, Amun-Ra, and Ptah, who were Anunnaki breeds. This blood type is the most potent, and it overwrites the Draconian's type when crossbred together. This is why the Draco reptilians hate the Pleiadians, as they know they can't compete genetically. The only way for them to win is to eradicate the A-positive bloodline from the population, which is completely far-fetched. However, do not be worried, as the Draco Igigi and Dark Elf hybrid lines are being exposed every day, and the only thing to do now is await the mass arrests for these beings' crimes against humanity. The more light we hold and spread, the quicker this timeline can accelerate for us to shift. It is time to unite as one, and we are stronger together. This article was written to give you another perspective of the Anunnaki, and that there is positive and negative in all species. We must walk away from labels and look at the bigger picture to see creation from 5D eyes. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for reading. Edit. Do not panic if you are one of the negative blood types. If you are love and light, huge respect to you, as you have altered what could be considered as more of a hostile bloodline into a positive one. You have set an example for the rest with your actions. That is remarkable in the grand scheme of things, showing that we can all turn to light and love if we choose. Remember, we are not defined by labels, only the meaning we give ourselves. Much love.